Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Thanks. Today we're going to talk about sexually transmitted disease education for adolescents. I will only disclose that I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. For your presenter objectives, by the end of today, I would like you to be able to identify a model of care to decrease risky sexual behaviors, demonstrate effectiveness of adolescent participation in STI education, and evaluate the success of implementation of a group interactive adolescent STI education. In the United States, female adolescents in 9th through 12th grades within both private and public school systems were surveyed in 2011 using the YRBS survey that we've talked about today. The findings specifically then for females included that 3.4% are having sexual intercourse before the age of 13, with 34.2% being sexually active with at least one person within the past 3 months of that survey being conducted. Finally, 70 to 92.5% of the females surveyed did not use any method of birth control, including but not limited to birth control pills, injectable birth control, or condoms. No condom use in the most recent sexual encounter accounted for 46.4%, which supports no sexually transmitted infection prevention during the encounter. Thus proving further that individual and group education is needed regarding the relationship between STI, pregnancy, and condom use for every sexual encounter to decrease risky sexual behaviors and STIs among adolescents. According to the CDC, and also specifically for Center for Children's Services, who I did my education with, they completed phone surveys and face-to-face meetings. They also concluded that over the past 10 years in Vermilion County, the STI education has been provided through 6-week health education classes at the public high school level, 1-day discussions during physical education classes, and parochial schools were getting no STI education whatsoever. This presentation will provide a more detailed STI rates for Vermilion County and also substantiate the change theory that I needed to use in order to implement a practice change that guided the process to improve the education that was provided to the Center for Children's Services, parents to student participants, to assist in the quality of education and ultimately decrease the STI rate among those adolescents. Specifically in Vermilion County, Illinois, we are ranked 99 out of 102 counties in Illinois for negative health behaviors. We have 512 reported STIs in our county. Our total population is only 81,509. We have 602 cases of chlamydia, 164 cases of gonorrhea, and 3 cases of syphilis. The majority of our county is also impoverished. So that's one of the reasons that I chose Parents Too Soon. They are just one program at Center for Children's Services. They have a target population of mothers that are supposed to be first-time pregnant mothers, ages 12 to 19. They also serve those mothers' children that are prenatal all the way up to 5 years of age. Let me go on to say that they can also maintain themselves in that program if they get pregnant again before their first child reaches the age of 5. They offer 3 types of services: group services, home visits, and the doula program. My education project was conducted with the Parents Too Soon infant and prenatal group. It consisted of 13 pregnant or mothering adolescents. The program is funded through the Ounce of Prevention Fund, and also they recently received the McVie Fund. Their benchmarks of their program include to improve the coordination of referrals from other community resources and supports, delay any subsequent births through the birth control education and STI education. They have served just in the last year alone 114 families. They have improved and increased their doulas and their home visitors. They used to have 3, now they're able to have 5. And they also have a waiting list to serve even more families in our community. The clinical practice change that I wanted to accomplish was the evidence-based question. Among the mothering and pregnant adolescents ages 12 to 19, using the Parents Too Soon program at Vermilion County's Children Family Services Organization, or Center for Children's Services, it's one and the same, does sexually transmitted infection education transmitted via tactile demonstration lead to decreased incidence of risky sexual behaviors compared to no current educational tool? It was directly in line with their annual goal, which is to delay or prevent subsequent pregnancies, delay at-risk behaviors, and decrease STIs as a whole. In order to do that, I chose to use the health belief model, which we discussed earlier in the afternoon. And the reason for that is because we are talking about adolescents. They're 12 to 19-year-old, first-time continuous mothers, if you will. We need to make sure that they understand that they're going to be more receptive to this education if they feel that they are susceptible to the problem, if they think that it's serious for them, if they think that the benefits of using the interaction or the implementation outweigh the risks. And also, do they feel confident enough once they've had that education to continue using it when they don't have that support sitting next to them? And that's a huge piece of what I needed to make sure that I conveyed to these adolescents. As you can see, this was my original idea that I came up with. We've been talking all day about an interactive model and bringing adolescents together. And so initially, when I developed this toolkit, you can see on your right-hand side the green model. It was in order to develop STI 3D models so that all of the STDs that I wanted to educate them about, they could actually touch and feel, but they were not attached to any genitalia. They also didn't have any gender related to them. So in the final mock-up model on the left-hand, on your left-hand side, you'll see the final piece, and I wanted it to be more of a flat so you could appreciate what the diseases look like. This was supposed to be genital warts. Using this specific model, it is obviously a cheap version of a 3D printer. They didn't have the colors, and the cost of using one that was even more high-end was about $500 per model. And so for this initial program, that was not what we were going to look at. So we changed the project, as you can see, to doing a little bit something different. So on the bottom right-hand side, what you're going to see is what I did for my adolescents. I served the population 13 adolescents, pregnant or mothering. I performed the education during one of their regularly scheduled group meetings. Using the model that you see down on your right-hand side, I purchased it for less than $30. It has a flip chart mechanism, so the presenter is always able to read exactly what they need to, because the home visitors may or may not have more than a high school education that are actually out there talking to these adolescent mothers. So on the front of the chart, not only can the adolescents see the pictures, I covered it up strategically with Velcro so that when they pulled off the treatment, they could actually hold the pills in their hand, they could see the injections, the creams that they used, but yet we still covered up all of the genitalia. So it didn't veer too far off of what my original goal was, and the intent was to allow them to interact with an STI model without giving them genitalia and grossing them out with actual pieces of, you know, someone else's genitals. So then the other part is, right before I gave the presentation to the adolescents, I gave them a pretest. 30 days after that pretest, or after that education, I gave them a post-test using 11 questions, the same questions. In the adolescents that I served, I had one 15-year-old, one 16, one 17, and then 10 adolescents that were over 18 years old. And then in the post-test, again, I had the 15-year-old, the 16-year-old, and the 18-year-olds. Only 8 of those did the post-test. Using that post-test, it was determined that the knowledge was gained during the interactive STI model education and demonstration. The interaction actually determined that it was very, very effective for these adolescents. They were able to sit in a group of their peers and talk about the disease processes and talk about how it affected them and how they may or may not have felt that it was, something that was going to happen to them because they were still with their baby's father, and how they really didn't need to use condoms. And that was one of the pieces of my education, was not just to educate them about HPV, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and herpes, but also to let them understand what it is to use a condom, how to use a condom. That was something that they had asked me to do, so I did that for them. Many of them said that they had never, ever used or watched their partner put on a condom in their life. So when we talk about, abstinence, or we talk about the idea of, do they even know how to protect themselves with the utmost protection that they can if they choose to do sexual behaviors, they really didn't know. So that's a huge concern of ours, especially in my county. So, with that being said, the survey questions that I used, again, both pre and post, were something as simple as how old are you, what's your gender, who do you live with, how do you describe yourself? And I also asked them things like, did you drink alcohol or use drugs before you had sexual intercourse the last time? And even most importantly, in the past 12 months in the beginning or in the past 1 month after the education, have you been diagnosed with an STI? The survey results that I gathered were compared to the health belief model concepts in order to analyze the impact of the project on adolescents' risky sexual behaviors. The participants were given both the pre and post test surveys, and it did substantiate that the education was successful. It cued them to action, it improved their self-efficacy, and it caused them to even verbalize during our conversations that they felt more empowered to use a condom, that they understood what the process was, where they had never done that before. In the post-test, I also asked them some satisfaction questions to see, A, was it something that they were did they appreciate it? Did they like it? Were they willing to listen again if somebody else had that same question? And 6 of the 8 respondents in that post-test stated that they liked the information, and 2 of them had said that they thought the pictures were gross. We're all going to see that that's going to be a gross piece. Now imagine if they were holding those 3D models in their hand. 2 of the 8 respondents stated that they thought the pictures were gross, as I said, and no respondents had any suggestions for improvement of the project or improvement of the education process. In summary from the project, the survey findings, because I had 13 total adolescents in the beginning of my project and only 8 completing the post-test, I could use Microsoft Excel just to promote my product and what I did with my education. And of that, 5 of the 13 adolescents had surveyed that they were diagnosed in the past 12 months with an STI. At the 1-month post-test, none of the 8 respondents who completed the survey had ever been diagnosed with an STI in that last 30 days. So that was an improvement. Next, when I asked in the pre-survey what form of birth control was used in their last sexual encounter, 3 stated no method of birth control was used. 4 used a condom, 2 used Depo-Provera, and 3 reported some other method of birth control was used. At the 1-month post-education survey of the 8 respondents that I had, the 4 respondents reported no method of birth control was used. 2 used condoms, and 2 used some other form of birth control. Additionally, when asked if any of the adolescents had ever been forced to have sexual intercourse when they didn't want to, 5 of the 13 respondents had said yes, that they had been forced to have sex when they didn't want to. Correspondingly, when I asked in the pre-survey how many sexual partners the adolescents had had in their life, 3 of the adolescents had only 1 partner, 1 respondent had 2 partners in their life, 3 respondents had 3 partners, and 1 adolescent had 5 partners, and 4 of those 13 adolescents had 6 or more partners in their life. I did not have any study that was correlating the investigation between the forced interactions, sexual encounters, if you will, and the number of sexual partners, but that is something that a future project could definitely